Good evening, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TGT News. When we speak about the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, a government official may often come to mind. So we are trying to connect the dots to NGOs and civil society organizations already on the ground doing work that directly ties into the SDGs. We begin this conversation with the Caribbean Natural Resources Institute, or CANARI. They aim to facilitate effective collaboration leading to managing natural resources critical to Caribbean islands. With that, we go in depth on CANARI with Technical Officer Candice Ramkissoon. Welcome, Candice. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
And thank you so much for joining us. Now, we want to start off, though, with when we say CANARI, what are we talking about?
So CANARI is the Caribbean Natural Resources Institute. CANARI is the short name for that. We are a regional technical nonprofit institute, and we've actually been working across the Caribbean for about 30 or so years. Our mission being to promote and facilitate participation, stakeholder participation in governance and management of natural resources in the region.
Now, in terms of vision, mission, what are some of those things that come to mind?
So in terms of our vision and mission, well, as I was saying, our aim is to facilitate equitable participation in governance and management of natural resources. And what we mean by that is we try to support and promote other voices to be included in decisions that are being made into how our natural resources are being managed and used in the region. So this includes local communities, other civil society organizations who often may not get a chance to have a say.
And I really appreciate the fact that the word equitable is used, and I think that is so crucial. But in terms of CANARI's work on the SDGs, what are some of the things that CANARI is doing where it concerns the Sustainable Development Goals?
Okay, so we've actually been doing quite a bit in recent time. And I mean, first, I guess to start off and say that the way that CANARI approaches its work is in alignment with the integrated approach that's being presented by the SDGs. Because each of the areas is a key thematic area of importance for development. We have, over the last few years, been really mobilizing civil society and civil society organizations who are working across diverse sectors to come together to work on development issues. So one of the key impactful initiatives I can highlight here is the what we call the SDGs Catalyst Network, where under a recent project, we brought together an informal network of 21 civil society organizations working across diverse sectors such as gender, environment, health, and so on, to actually try to catalyze action and to enhance participation of civil society in governance and decision-making on development in the country.
And why is it so important to mobilize those civil societies?
It actually is really important. This is a critical point because many of us, not just in civil society, if you look at all of the sectors, government, civil society, private sector, often we tend to work in silos. And so within civil society itself, we recognize that there were many different groups working across diverse areas. And so we wanted to bring those groups together for increased voice, for joint action and collective advocacy. Civil society itself has, three key roles from our standpoint, which is as advocates, watchdogs, and implementers for sustainable development. And that collective voice and taking collective action is going to be even more impactful. And one thing I would say is that as we had come together as the SDGs Catalyst Network, it gave us this a better ground to communicate and a more cohesive way to reach out to others working on sustainable development, including the government, the Ministry of Planning and Development.
Now, you mentioned SDGs Catalyst Network. You have to give me a little overview on that, right?
Right. So as I said, the Catalyst Network actually came about under a project called CSOs for Good Governance, which actually recognized that we need to engage civil society and we need to do it collaboratively, working on development issues. And so we looked at leading civil society organizations across Trinidad and Tobago who were working on various areas, as I mentioned, environment, climate change, energy, health, gender, etc. And we brought them together so that recognizing that they each have their own networks in their sectors, so that the whole idea is that we spread out and we start to have broader conversations on sustainable development in the sectors being led by civil society. And so the network has actually been able to, for example, we worked on a spotlight report, and one of the key issues we thought was of cross-cutting importance for Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, which is a spotlight report on climate change. And we came together to look at that issue in a cross-cutting way. So how does climate change affect gender? How does it interact with biodiversity? How does it interact with health and ecosystems? And we were able to look at and examine what government was doing and then put forward our own perspectives and recommendations as civil society on what improvements were needed. So that's just to give you an example of how this collective action and working together as civil society has been useful so far.
And what kind of feedback do you get when you put forward your recommendations? Because I'm very interested in the way that you broke down groups into advocates, watchdogs, implementers. Because I can imagine there's a potential for different groups in their own silos, in their own sectors, in their own circles, to say, okay, well, this is something that we are really interested in, this is something that we want to pursue. And they may have their own ways, methods, or methodologies of doing that. But realizing, okay, well, when the conversation is broadened, there are other people who are trying to do things. So is it that they can get some information from what it is you're putting forward, so they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, or they can realize, okay, well, this problem was tackled in another area like this? How has that conversation been?
I think, well, two things. It's been a real learning curve, I think for civil society coming together in this way for the first time, learning to trust each other, build relationships, trying to understand what each other is doing and, what are the opportunities to work together, or what are areas where there are gaps that people can fill. So that has been something that has happened, and I think it has been quite welcomed by the civil society organizations that we have engaged with thus far. And they also have been welcoming, the opportunities to work together, because civil society often doesn't have the kinds of resources that might be available in other sectors, funding, human resource capacity, etc. sometimes to continue to do the work that's being done. So coming together has been really useful, where you can pool together skills, resources, and so on. So that's been welcome. And then at the level of working with other sectors like the government, it has really been excellent, I think, because we, as I think I mentioned just now, we are able to present a more cohesive front. We've thought through things and we are working collaboratively, and it makes it so much more effective and efficient when we are communicating or engaging with government.
Definitely being able to represent yourself from a more position of strength in that unity. But there's something that you mentioned in terms of learning to trust each other. I want you to expand on that. When we return from the break, we are speaking with Candice Ramkissoon, Technical Officer for CANARI. Stay tuned. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Technical Officer at CANARI, Candice Ramkissoon. This is In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. And Candice, just before we took the break, you were speaking about different groups learning to trust each other moving forward. Expand on that a little bit, thanks.
Yes, so I think, it's quite common, not just in civil society, but I think people are working on various issues and focusing on various on different things. And in any relationship, you're coming together and there are these sort of teething problems where you try to understand what each other is doing, Civil society hasn't historically, I think in many instances, been working collaboratively like this. And then there's the whole issue of, whether you're competing in the same areas. And so part of the work of, when we brought the SDGs Catalyst Network together had really been to stop and analyze and have people start to talk to each other and understand what we each were doing. We started to map out, where we are contributing to the SDGs, which started to kind of build that trust. And there's a whole lot of, just, patience and just taking the process one step at a time, getting to know each other so that we can work collaboratively. It doesn't just happen seamlessly. So as I said, that was a big part of the learning when we brought together the network.
And part of the reason I ask is because I can see two general scenarios. One with someone saying, I love this issue. This issue is what I am doing. You can't love this issue like me. And there's also the position of being perceived to be the go-to person on that issue. And then also, I think sometimes there's a perception that there is a very finite pie, and if it's being sliced in a way that encourages you to get some, that means it'll be to my detriment. So in terms of working together and realizing, okay, well, this pie may be a little bigger than we thought, or if we move a little more efficiently, a lot more can get done. But one of the things, though, I want to ask is, who are some of these players involved? Who are some of the members of the Catalyst Network? Call some names.
Yeah, so I can do that, and just to note that there are a lot more than I can call. There are lots of civil society organizations working across Trinidad and Tobago, and some of them in the Catalyst Network are, for example, Habitat for Humanity. And if I can highlight some of what they're doing, they are focusing on safe housing for vulnerable groups, the disabled. I Am Movement, for example, they are focused on more of the environmental issues, climate change in particular, through their work on the climate marches, which some of you may be familiar with, as well as documentaries and so on that they do. There are others like the Family Planning Association, the Institute of Development and Gender Studies. They focus more on, supporting the LGBTQI communities and advocating for, gender violence and so on. And there are so many more groups to highlight. And I mean, if there's particular interest also, I wanted to share here that there is an SDGs knowledge platform, a Caribbean Civil Society SDGs knowledge platform that CANARI is actually hosting to showcase the work by civil society. So you can see the range of these groups and what they are actually doing to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
So how do people engage with that? Is it a matter of going to your website, or how do people do that?
Yes, so you can access that platform via CANARI's website. And it's as simple as clicking on it. And the way that it's organized is that you'll be able to see stories by various civil society organizations highlighting exactly what it is they do and how it's linked to or is contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals.
And one of the things looking at CANARI that I appreciate, it seems as though there is a strong emphasis on building channels so that things can get done. Because sometimes you look at a situation and it's very personality driven. So if someone is in a situation and they're behind that effort, when they go, all efforts, it seems as though they can die down. Versus saying, okay, well, this is something that we are setting up so that someone may come, someone may go, but the channel is there, the policy is there. And with that, CSOs are one thing. Does it extend past the CSOs? What is the role of the citizen, the everyday citizen, the layperson, to help drive these SDGs forward in your view, Candice?
Okay, so I mean, I guess I'll bring it back to the whole idea of the SDGs being interconnected, which means that we really need to take a whole of society approach. The ordinary citizen may think that, oh, that's not about me, that's not for me, I don't relate to that, it's a fancy term. But development issues affect us in some way at every single level, even as individuals. So the man on the street, whether it is, climate change is important to you, or gender issues are important to you, or, whatever it is, you can, for example, look at your consumption practices, look at whether you choose eco-friendly services and goods, engage in practices like recycling, um, engage in conversations, take part in consultations and forums to have your voices heard. And you can even be part of, creating those spaces in your own community. Even volunteering and trying to work with civil society groups who are addressing key issues that are of importance to you. So there are a couple of key things as an individual that you can do. It's not just for government, it's not just for civil society groups, it's everybody has to play a role.
All right, and looking at the Catalyst Network, Ms. Ramkissoon, there is sometimes you can be ambitious and try everything one time, but sometimes it's better to take a little creep before you walk approach. Are there certain SDGs that CANARI and through your collaborations with other CSOs are focusing on more than others? How does that go?
I mean, that's an interesting question. From CANARI's standpoint, we work strongly on the environment-themed SDGs. So SDG 13 on climate change, 14 on forests and biodiversity, 15, on oceans and so on. But it's hard to say that there's focus on one issue versus another, because the range of what civil society organizations alone have been working on have showed us that we are touching on each of the key areas. I think, there's a lot of effort on the environment-based one, because we have key issues that are facing us now, like climate change, but there are also other key issues that have come up, for example, like the pandemic, which are putting more importance on other SDGs that have to do with socioeconomic, inclusive socioeconomic growth, and other areas like that, and health, for example. So I think it's broad. It's really meant to be looked at in an interconnected way. So it's not really thinking about one versus the other, because each area has some sort of overlap with several other areas.
Totally understood. And this last minute that we have, are there any upcoming initiatives from CANARI's viewpoint that we can look forward to?
So I think in terms of the SDGs, we really want to continue promoting that collaborative approach. And so we are looking for opportunities to really continue our work as the SDGs Catalyst Network. We would like to highlight more of that. There isn't one specific initiative just yet, but we are looking at all of the opportunities to continue to highlight SDGs and the work by civil society. And I think what is important maybe to say is you can continue to look at our platforms on social media, even our website, because we are going to continue as CANARI coordinating, working with other civil society organizations and the government on sustainable development.
And you've used the word collaboration plenty. We want to thank you for collaborating with us here for this conversation. Candice Ramkissoon, Technical Officer at CANARI, and on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.